Welcome to The Dead Life. Here's world-renowned medium, Allison Dubois.
Today on The Dead Life, I have a special guest. Today, we're going to hear from Melanie Flowers, the never-before-heard-from best friend of Lindsay Wells. Lindsay disappeared when she was 9 months pregnant back on March 27th, 1999. Melanie and I are going to unpack what led up to her disappearance. To book a reading with me for Father's Day readings, email us at booking@allisondubois.com. If you have a life question for me and Sophia for my Love Me Not segment or witness information about Lindsay Wells' disappearance, leave your question or comment at 802-332-3811. If you want to watch past and present episodes of The Dead Life, you can follow me on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. I'm pleased to announce that my Divination 22 intention setting vodka, both the Money Potion and Love Potion, are now available at divination22.com and bigthirst.com. You can now get your hands on your own bottle and use your inner light to change your life. I want to welcome Melanie Flowers to my show. Melanie, thank you for being here for Lindsay.
Thank you for having me.
It's interesting. I had Googled Lindsay's name last night to get the date again because I just worked a different case. And so I had different dates in my head, and my Instagram and YouTube popped up pretty close under her name. That's how little investigation seems to have been happening in the last 25 years, that there were no real updates on her case. I found that astounding. I should be way down there in the list of information available on her. Can you tell us about Lindsay and how you two met?
Well, I think it was back in 96. I was about 16. I think she was, oh God. No, was it? I don't know. It was so long ago. It's been 25 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
So, yeah, it might have been, 96, and she was about 19. She was wild, like just fun wild though, and just spirit. Beautiful girl, but she had some troubles, following her, especially with her daughter's father and that family. But I don't know how our paths crossed, but she was just fun. She was kind of like a bigger sister to me, and we just had so much fun together. She was just a beautiful soul, just person in general. And we just had so much fun together.
So when was the last time you saw or talked to Lindsay?
The night before she went missing. I was supposed to get her that morning and take her to her appointment. And that's, yeah.
And how did she seem to you when you talked to her?
She was fine. There's history between her and the fiance. There was a lot of turmoil in that home, especially with the mother. So when she went missing, my mind straight went to John and his mother.
I'm so glad to hear that from you, because I had added that as one of my questions so we can just address it. But it seems to me if he was living with his mom, and I believe Lindsay was living there as well at the time, that I would think the mom would have a lot to say, that she'd be protesting his innocence, that she would have known that, exactly what went on in the house and what unfolded, and be a little bit more forthcoming. But I didn't see any information available from her as far as what happened that night. And the vibe I got just from the mother's energy is she's the kind of mom that would help a son cover up something gruesome or criminal. Yeah. That's just my opinion.
She did not like Lindsay. I will be very honest with you. Even when I was in that home with Lindsay, it was dark energy in a way. She just was never pleasant to be around. Her and Lindsay argued a lot, which caused Lindsay and John to argue. It was just, Lindsay never wanted to be there.
Yeah, you can't really blame her. I'm sure she felt very unwelcome in that home. I also had talked to some people close to Lindsay that said she was talking about giving the baby up for adoption. Had you heard that?
No, and when I heard on your podcast that it was David's mother, they didn't even have a great relationship because I moved Lindsay out of that house um, with my mother, which, oh my goodness, that became a horrific event as well. You know, I had to move her
Yeah.
out of that house into her grandfather's house, where she
So
finally
that
had
was
peace.
that was that was Lindsay's mom that you moved her out of her house?
No, David's mother.
David's mother. Gotcha.
And I don't, I mean, there was a bunch of people living in that home.
I
Um,
have no doubt.
and,
I met David.
um, yeah, um, there was so much going on in that circle. Um, yeah, and she was in turmoil again underneath that roof, and we literally had to pack her up and just take what we could. But she was
Right.
staying there, so she could be with her daughter, you know, and see her daughter. But there was a lot of back and forth, and it was really sad because she wanted to be with her daughter, but they were using her daughter as, you know, a
A
toy.
pawn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't okay. But David's mother and Lindsay, they did not get along either because they wanted to use as a pawn Lindsay's and David's daughter. It was really sad.
That is sad. So I talked to David and I have my own impressions that I got of him. He was an interesting character for sure. He actually didn't know how to edit himself. I found that interesting. He was pretty, with me anyways, he was pretty straightforward in trying to get at Miles or threatening to get at Miles when they were in jail together because Miles was wearing a wire to try and record David incriminating himself. And he I could see him actually getting upset that that people would even be looking at him as a subject, so much so that he was willing to take a lie detector test with us, which we did administer to him with a professional polygraph expert, which we'll go into as well. But it was an interesting energy in Simi Valley. I don't know what it is now, but given the circumstances then, I can't imagine it got much better. And when I was there was a big drug overtone to Simi Valley, like a bit of a criminal energy that was there. And the homicide detective that I was working with, that we brought in independently of Simi Valley, he had arrested a number of people we walked past in the park and on the streets, and he just pointed them out and he's like, yeah, I pinched that guy. And it was just amazing at how much criminal activity seemed to be in the area there. And again, a big drug energy there, so much so that it was such a low energy. I was shocked when we went to we went to John's house and we wanted to go into the backyard. And the people wanted money. So production gave them some money so that we could go into the backyard so I could pull impressions because that's what I do. And I wanted to bring in a sonar that doesn't disrupt the dirt. It just goes over it to see if there's a depression in the earth. And they wanted $3,000 to look for a 9-month pregnant woman that could be buried in the backyard, which I just thought was soulless on their part. But that really was the energy of the town. It was, what are you going to do for me? And very much opportunistic in nature. So I just wanted to put that out there for the listeners so that they get a visual of what kind of place she was in. And it seemed that Lindsay would go from one bad boy to another.
Yes.
And that she thought she could fix them somehow or saw potential in them, which is a very slippery slope for women
Yes.
to go down. Bad boys, the first word, bad, not necessarily a good thing. You don't try and fix them, you let them fix themselves. So pregnant women tend to be more in danger than non-pregnant women when it comes to relationships. So that was another strike against Lindsay in her trying to just live some sort of a life and find her happiness. It didn't seem it was going to be with John Was Lindsay afraid of David?
I wouldn't say she was afraid of David in a way. I mean, David was always in and out of jail, prison.
Yeah.
I think I saw him maybe 2 times, maybe if that. It was more his mother. She was scary. And then the family behind that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
They,
When we were there, when
yeah.
we were there filming, those were not people that were willing to be interviewed.
Oh, no.
So, and John amazingly happened to have checked himself into rehab when we were there, so was unavailable for interview.
Yeah, not
at the
surprising.
time. Yeah. So I thought that was telling. In his, if it was my pregnant fiance that disappeared, I'd move heaven and earth to try and give whatever information I had to try and help find my wife to be and my child.
Absolutely.
And he just ghosted us. David, on the other hand, he was very willing to be interviewed. He was very forthcoming with his time in jail and his history. So it was, that's not even anything I had to look at the file for. He just sort of unloaded everything and gave me plenty of information. Because when I'm interviewing, I'm watching them for deception or for what they're not saying or avoiding talking about. And everything I asked him, he answered. So I did appreciate that from him. And I just wanted to say that because we're going to go into some more details of the town and why some cases don't get solved. And this one, it felt and still feels to me that if just a few things were unraveled, this could be solved. Like this feels like a solvable case to me. So I just wanted to put that out there. So now let's go to John. What did you think of, I know you said John's mother is scary, but I also heard something about the dad, and I don't know if this is something that was common knowledge or if you had heard, but did he own or manage like a concrete factory?
I never saw John's father at that house, or heard of him, but John, he had a truck. He did work in concrete and plastering. And the morning of the day I went over to their house to get Lindsay because I had, I believe, called her. She didn't answer. I called the house and it just kept ringing. Didn't answer, so I went over there to get her. He had concrete stuff and plastic stuff out on the driveway, the garage that's always open because we used to hang out in that garage. There was stuff all over the driveway, and the garage was kind of half shut, and he was sitting on a couch where the couch is in the garage, and then there's a pool table, and there was 2 legs dangling, and I kind of bent down underneath, and I said, "Hey, where's Lindsay?" And he like freaked out. He had this weird look on his face, and he goes, "She's not here." He's all, "Get out of here." And I kind of just was like, "Oh, okay." And I left because it scared me sometimes.
Well, sure. Yeah, that would.
So I just went home and I kept calling and nothing. And then I think Lindsay's mom, Donna, had messaged me the next day asking, "Have you seen Lindsay?" And I said, "Oh." And then that's when I started finding out everything. But the interesting thing to me was there was a rug underneath the pool table. The rug was missing when I started really thinking about things.
Yeah, we had gotten some information in our investigation that the garage may have been a place where this took place and or disposal of Lindsay. We interviewed Miles about that.
I don't know what Miles is. I always knew that there was a mic or a was it a mic or a mat? But Miles, I don't know.
So Miles was a good friend of John that had very shady, deceptive answers for me and my investigator, my homicide detective. We both interviewed him at the same time and felt that he was not telling us everything and that he was lying. And we got him to agree to take a lie detector test, which he then never took.
Oh.
So to me, my sense is Miles knows exactly what happened to Lindsay. He seemed to me to be the kind of friend you'd call if you needed to get rid of a body. So he was very, it's as if he tries to become the friendly person he thinks you won't suspect, where they're almost overly friendly in nature and trying to appear open when he was very evasive about the questions. So, and my partner, John Perkins, was my homicide investigator, had worked, and I believe he started LAPD cold case unit. So he had been doing this for a very long time, and he had the same sense that Miles was a part of this puzzle in what happened to Lindsay. So I was hoping maybe Miles, it's been 25 years, would grow a conscience in this time. But yeah, it's interesting because the difference between David and John, for me, they had put pictures in front of me in the beginning because I don't want to know anything about the people until I've read the energy of the photographs of the people involved. And David felt like somebody who would be a petty criminal, maybe some assaults, that kind of a person. But as soon as I put my hand on John's picture, my impressions were that he would be capable of taking someone's life. And that was my impression. And so in the beginning, I was already like, David didn't do this, even though David's not an upstanding guy. He's not somebody that you would want to trust with your house keys. He didn't seem to be somebody who would do this to her either. So in my mind, I started to eliminate him. John, we got information that he had laid concrete in the backyard the day after Lindsay disappeared. So the materials that you were seeing were being used then, which may be why he was trying to get you off the property so quickly, because you probably showed up there while everything was in the process. My feeling was when it happened, maybe in the middle of the night, that she was moved then. And then whether she was buried in the backyard and concrete was laid, or they laid concrete over things that they buried tied to a possible murder that they just wanted to make sure nobody was ever going to find. Either way, it felt totally suspicious that concrete would be laid the day after she disappeared, hours after she probably disappeared. And we got very little information as far as, for me, did the police take luminol through? Did the police take luminol through the garage? Did they luminol the bathtub, which brings a fluorescence to blood, any blood that may have been there, and interviewed the mother, John's mother? I wanted to see information on a thorough investigation. I didn't see that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but we were not able to access that while we were there. Now, the police, while we were there, seemed to be trying to placate us and cooperate on a basic level. However, when we asked them not to park marked police vehicles in front of the hotel that we were doing David's lie detector, where we were administering that test, when we pulled up with production, they had more than one marked car parked right in front of the entrance to the hotel. So right then, me and my investigator felt as though we were being set up, because we didn't want David to get scared that the cops were there and run off, whether or not he's got some inner beef with them or a warrant or had been threatened by them. We don't know. We wanted them to be in another room observing but not interacting with him. And they sort of blew that.
Oh, God.
So you may not be surprised to hear that, but David still showed up and went in and took the test. And I sat there with John Perkins, my investigator, and we watched him pass that test when he was asked those questions. And for years, the police in Simi Valley had speculated that David did it. And they kept pointing the finger to David, which is why we wanted to give him the lie detector test. He wanted to take it to exonerate himself because he didn't want people thinking he would do that to Lindsay or a baby. Yeah. And also so his daughter didn't have that view of her father. Absolutely. So he had a lot of motivation in being able to take that test, which we were happy to make available for him. He came in, he passed it. He was so relieved. And he said, I've been telling them, I think it had been around 10 years, maybe exactly 10 years when we were filming, because it was 2009. He said, I've been asking them for years to give me a lie detector and they wouldn't give me one. And so we were the first people who even gave him a lie detector test. And the interesting thing that happened is a few hours after the lie detector test, after our the person that we had administering it, our professional lie detector test analysis guy, after he gave him the test and gave us the results, and we sat there while he took the test. So we saw this all unfold and got the results. John Perkins, my investigator, gets a phone call that the agent made a mistake, that the guy that administered the test was now wanting to change his findings, that that David passed the lie detector test. Now he was starting to say that David didn't. And me and John Perkins were completely taken aback. I said, have you ever seen this? And he said, in all my years of being a homicide detective, I've never seen somebody administer a lie detector test and then go back on the findings. And so I thought that was beyond suspicious. It seemed more like some sort of collusion had taken place, or I don't know if law enforcement got to him. I mean, I'm just speculating here, but it seemed like he had talked to somebody who was trying to convince him otherwise. This man had been giving lie detector tests for decades. He knew exactly what he was doing. And when we sat with him and he gave us the findings, he was 100% sure David was telling the truth. So for him to then change his mind was mind-blowing. Yeah. So again, when cases aren't solved, there's usually forces that are often that are keeping it from being solved. And I just thought you'd like to have that information for any interaction you may have with David and his daughter in the future. David passed that lie detector test. So I wanted to say that publicly to exonerate him, because I know that where he lives, if he's still there, they're going to give the second finding, the one that happened hours after his test, after we'd cleared out with production. And I just wanted it to be on the record for him.
That's good, though. He never crossed my mind. I mean, him and his daughter. Yeah. I could see why he would want his name cleared for his daughter's sake, too. Right. Lindsay had loved her, and she loved Lindsay. So, yeah. But
I'm awfully glad that the daughter wasn't at the house with Lindsay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because John didn't strike me as somebody who would have a problem with that. No. With the child disappearing as well. So obviously he didn't, because Lindsay was 9 months pregnant. That baby was completely viable and could have lived outside of her body. So I believe it was a boy. I think I remember hearing it was a boy. Yeah. So all of this is just so incredibly horrible. So Miles, that was part of it. We interviewed him over a couple of days, talked to him. He wanted to take pictures with me and my investigator, and he seemed to like the whole limelight idea of, being a star or like whatever. It was just really bizarre because we were there for a missing persons case. most likely a murder, a double homicide at that. California itself is a state that has always had problems with criminals because it's where people run that are running from something typically. And on top of that, when I was there, I lived there 3 years and I just couldn't even stand it. I'm like, I have to go home. And people served a fifth of their sentence was the average. So if you got 25 years, you serve about 5. And I just thought that was reprehensible, and it made complete sense why there's so many criminals on the streets there, and they run and hide, and they acclimate to towns and cities where they fit in. And there was a very big drug presence in Simi Valley, methy. It was like a meth energy there to me at the time when we were there in 2009. Yeah. And that is a very low energy to be around for sure. And people do very nuts things on meth. So it felt a little dangerous there. Honestly, I'm glad I was there with security and a protection crew, to be honest. Keeping Lindsay's story alive is the most loving thing we can do for her and her baby. So thank you to my listeners for tuning in. Tune in next Tuesday for part 2 of Melanie Flowers as we look further into the disappearance of Lindsay Wells. I'm Allison Dubois. This is The Dead Life. And to all of my believers out there, don't stop believing.
Join us next week on The Dead Life. And don't forget to subscribe now to get notified of every new episode.